it feels like seven, what it's fighting for, it's like it's fucking imagination. Like just
Right.
being able to use your mind creatively. Your life is like a constant bust and boom cycle.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
fucking-
7 wants the nipple, 2 wants to give the nipple.
Yeah.
And when 7's like, I have a nipple too,
I have the nipple. Source.
the abundance of milk flows through me.
So I'm like, man, nobody wants to put some elbow grease into life. Like, scam a little bit harder. Like, just push the
harder.
boundaries. Like, you could get so much more out of life.
The Big Hormone Enneagram.
Let me lay it on the line. I got a little freakiness inside. Let you know that the man has got to deal with it.
I'm John Lekovich, 405, sexual self-pres, 458 Trifix.
I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual, 9 with 1 wing, 974 Trifix.
What up? It's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing 7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I'm a social self-preservation 9-wing 1, 963 Trifix.
Like and subscribe on Apple and Spotify, and leave us a review. If you want to support the show with a donation, you can find us on Venmo at Big Hormone and paypal.me/Big Hormone. All right.
Great. What's going on? How's
What are we
life?
doing?
What's new?
Oh, those questions.
That's what she
Not
cares
much.
about. Speaking of 7
Social
frustration,
questions.
what's new? She doesn't want to know what is or what happened before.
Your
What's-
his favorite answer to that is nothing. What's news from the last 12 hours? Nothing. All
Is
right,
that really
dude.
what you say?
I'm not an entertainment machine.
And then I have to roast him for being boring. I was like, "You're so boring." And then he has a 7 wing. And he's like, "I'm not boring. I'm not boring."
I don't
You
need
need
to.
to say something interesting, Ikram.
Yeah. Why do you have to be the one to make things interesting for you?
Well, it's about me. You have to
Okay.
entertain me.
Oh, yeah.
Mm,
Obviously.
We forgot about that.
Obviously.
Yeah, you're not being entertaining.
Maybe it's entertaining for me to not be entertaining. How about that?
You know, the annoying thing about reactivity is that it's very repetitive. It's like, get a new
It's so
twist,
true.
get a new way.
Oh,
Nah, I just want to
I
stay
see
here
the
and just hate the
backhanded-
same shit.
cut down there.
Find new,
Yes.
interesting ways to hate the same shit.
Yeah.
Just
That's-
keep
yeah.
digging and twisting the same knife in the same wound.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Well, Ikram's starting to hate you.
Yeah, no. Hate that's it's the right kind of hate though. You need
That's right.
spice, the
Oh,
spicy
God.
kind of hate,
It's polarity hate.
you know?
There's his 7 wing.
You can't like me too much. That's not good. We don't need that.
Yeah, there's no chance of that. I'm just kidding.
That's what I like to hear. All right, today let's talk about frustration. Let's talk about 7.
Man, how far we've
We're
come.
waiting for the 7 who's got so much to tell us.
How far we've come from
Stop
canceling
trolling
7
me.
fixes.
I right before this, I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Like, so I need to be volleyed questions. and
Welcome to
things.
Big Hormone
This
Enneagram.
is how you
Here's
start
Ikram.
it.
Go.
It's the Ikram show, everyone. The 7 is here who's going to entertain us with interestingness and insights that we've never heard before.
So, Ikram, we've been canceling
my
7s for
God.
over a year now. Why should we not cancel you?
Yes.
God, guys.
You can cancel me if you want. You know, I don't care. That's the thing about being
That's
a
the
certain
beautiful
type.
thing
You know,
about
we
some
will
of
live.
She
We
will
will
thrive
survive.
without us.
It's fine.
I think that the interesting thing that I've heard you say about frustration that I haven't heard is that you've had a unique experience being around a lot of 7s, being really close to 7s. And there's a sort of like a 7 frustration vortex that gets created. And it doesn't seem like there's enough being, I mean, we've said some things about like how wild and manic 7 frustration can be, but it feels like the chronic disappointment it doesn't get highlighted enough. You've said things about how it can seem almost overwhelming to people outside who don't get it, that when 2 7s get together, that it is just a vortex of negativity that people wouldn't really expect from 7s. So like, where's that coming from? Or what's, I guess, talk about that.
Yeah. Just personally, I like meditating on the lines. So 7 is pushing in between 5 and 1. And so I know a lot of sevens who have like just like a devastating amount of self-awareness about like everything that's wrong with them, to the point where it's like hard to even hear and for people to like bear because of the line to one. And then if you think about the line to five, it's like it's almost like giving up on the dream because you're finally going into rejection and you're going to the withdrawn rejection line. And so it's like yeah, the solution to my pain and my frustration is like giving less to the world and knowing my limitations. And so you have those two energies like, I don't know, surrounding you. And it feels like the actual core type is just like trying to manage those intense energies and like stay a positive type. And then if you think about the wings as well, seven is surrounded by six and eight, like two reactive types. So it's just like it's fucking so hard to be positive. It actually is. And your positivity is your gateway into assertiveness as well. So it's like yeah, it feels like when I talk to other sevens, there's just a lot of pressure around like trying to make your dreams come true, and it's not even like a three. Yeah, it's not like Gatsby trying to accomplish everything in the world or like gain notoriety and whatever. Like if you talk to every seven, or like at least the ones I know and for myself, it's you're trying to give yourself what you didn't get in childhood. And there's something, I don't know, devastatingly innocent about that and vulnerable. And it's often sad because it's really hard to get what you didn't get when you were a child. And because it's an assertive type as well, like there's a way you're not pausing and seeing when you like are actually damaging yourself or the wounds that you can't attend to the wounds that are there. And some of the wounds are not even healable. So there's that backlog of pain. Because if you address that pain, it might slow you down. And so I'll start with that.
I was talking to a seven last night, and she had a couple like crazy years in her life, really pushing limits and boundaries. And then I think there was a really strong collapse, like a line to one, slamming the brakes. But also, I think there's a lot of like self punishment, and like I think you spoke to like a certain self hatred or certain this is
Yeah.
what's wrong with me.
Mhm.
And she was just saying like I'm so negative, and it's like there's just so much negativity in me. And I was just really interesting because when you talk about didn't get like trying to give yourself what you didn't get in childhood, how I guess I'm trying to connect it where how aware do you find sevens generally about that connection, and then that sort of self-hatred in a seven, is it like a self-hatred based on the sense of like lack, like I'm not getting what I need or having what I need, or because I didn't get what I needed there's something wrong with me, or like I guess it feels like there's some kind of connection there, but I don't know what it is.
Also, okay, for the first part, the awareness, I find, at least, the sevens I've been close to, it's like deeply aware that it's coming from childhood. And it's coming from, sometimes it can get dramatic. And you describe your life like a tragedy. And I try to like, I even have to like be super aware of that. I'm like, my life hasn't been that bad, Jesus Christ. But it's like, yeah, just seeing the lack that you had in your life. And now you're on a mission to try to go grab that as fast as possible. And I think the self-hatred, where does the self-hatred come from? Honestly, I think it's like it's because you've not been able to achieve the satisfaction of getting what you want because the goal is constantly changing. And I also think that because you have that line to one, like you're not even, it's like seven's not a competency type, So it's, if you really look at yourself for a second, like in the quiet, it's like, okay, why am I suffering and why am I doing all this crazy shit? I wasn't fully like aware and embodied when I've been doing shit and then later you get embarrassed by it or whatever. And so that comes like flooding in with that line to one, and like you stab yourself with it all the time.
Is it
Um,
like retroactive shame?
yeah, yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One way I'm thinking of it is like, well, sort of archetypally, it's a relationship to the mother, and you know, not necessarily the literal mother, but you're going to project it onto her. That well, like in the ideal sense, mother is where you're supposed to get unconditional acceptance and so forth. And the seven, the inborn seven program is such that even if you were mostly getting that or getting 90% of it or something, it's going to frame it as I didn't get it or I barely got it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a sort of frustration. Well, like I've joked about in the past about seven, like I didn't get enough of the nipple and the milk, right? Or whatever, the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so that feels like sort of a statement that the mother is giving to you about you, right? That's saying something that she didn't give me all the stuff I wanted. So that's saying
Yes.
something about me or something, even though, again, it's a self-created, projection or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Walking around like you're not enough. You haven't.
something like
Yeah,
that.
it's seriously lacking. Yeah,
Yeah.
to a ridiculous degree, because like my seven friends, I think that they're like pretty fucking interesting people who've lived interesting lives and seem normal, on the outside at least. But then like you talk to them, um, it's just like this like deep shame that's like coming from I don't even fucking understand where it's coming from.
Well, and that's part of the seven thing of sort of going from thing to thing to thing is like to get small hits of something that at least satisfies the some kind of immediate psychic aural fixation, right?
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I think about
Yeah.
my sisters, and it's rejection heavy family, and then we have 1-7. And I remember we were at my sister's birthday party like several years ago, and she was to a table full of people. She was still talking about how our parents were so shitty, like to people who don't know any of our family dynamics. And then my eighth sister kind of like checked her and said, "Don't talk about." She sort of included her in it, and she's like, "Don't talk about me to these fucking strangers." And so there's an interesting way that the eights are sort of disowning their childhood in a way, as I've already grown up, and the thing that happened to me or what my parents did to me, I shouldn't have expected them to give me anything necessarily. And the seventh thing is she's still sort of holding on to my mom and my dad didn't give me the things that I needed as a child, even in her like late 30s. It's still part of the story, and I find that interesting because you might assume that like an attachment type would still be holding on to the parental sort of attachments in terms of their life story, but it feels like there is like a I think that is part of the seven story of that sort of gets played out in whole life, that I still didn't get enough toys. I didn't get enough of the goodies, and my whole life is built around making sure that I get them now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like that frustration is then used as fuel to take yourself into the world, So like letting go of some of that takes the wind out of your sails. I don't
Mm,
know. You can
okay.
of course like reframe it and obviously try to be nicer to maybe your parents or whatever. But yeah, I think that impulse to like drum up frustration, I constantly think about how the seven is using frustration as engine to throw themselves into the world,
Hmm,
and to not give up on the dream. And I
that's
think that's
good.
why I've been so close to so many sevens. Because it's like not a lot of people have the constitution to deal with that. It's like I think some of the shame that sevens feel is also just your life is like a constant bust and boom cycle.
Yeah.
You're
right,
fucking
right.
you're in the gutter and you're sad. And the frustration is like at an all-time high because whatever scam you had or whatever dream you had that you kind of got yourself into, it's now not satisfying you anymore, or it's not what you thought it was going to be, or whatever,
That
because you're constantly not satisfied. That's just like part of your ego structure. So you're in a bust cycle, and then but the thing is, that frustration, that like bringing up the sadness or the anger or whatever, then motivates you to go out and to do it again. And then you get something, and then it happens again. You fucking bust again, and it's
mhm,
exhausting. Like
right.
it's exhausting to go through it, and it's really exhausting for people to listen to it because you're really suffering for what? Like to have a good life, to like be happy, to get what you want. Like not a lot of people give a shit about that. And it can look like really petty. It can look psychotic on the extreme side. Like this person is like drumming themselves into a manic episode for what? Like stimulation. So I don't really have judgment around that because I'm obviously a seven and doing the same thing. But yeah, that's why it's sad when you get two sevens together because I think you can get further with the frustration. And like all this other shit comes up, like all the childhood stuff.
I'm thinking of the tarot deck where the world card has a beautiful naked woman, right? And that's getting sort of to sort of this mother association thing that I'm doing, which is just like the world should be, this sensual, wonderful thing with I don't know, beauty, experience, and attraction and titillation and et cetera, right? And so the seven is doing some kind of protection from the other truth of the world that it's a hag, right?
Yeah.
And seven kind of doesn't want to see that dried up tit of the witch hag.
It feels like we can't fucking handle the dried up tit.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah,
It's like I can't do this. So that's like the line to five. It's like
that's right.
you're fucking ragged, and then you're like, oh, this is what the world is. Like I have now a rejection view. And I don't like the fucking world. I don't like it here
Wow.
at all.
Wow.
Right.
So I'm gonna have to, I don't know, go into a corner and try to get like good at something to survive. But like maybe let me just fall back for a bit.
It's interesting you pointed out that the lines of seven are both competency types.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. Both competency types surrounded by reactivity. It sort of seems like I'm trying to get to this sort of abundant heaven, but I'm on either side of just these reactions to how things are not going, and I'm grasping to build something or find a direction, but not sustainable. It's not my home base or something like that.
Yeah, I think it really brings into view how that would produce frustration. It's like I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by reactivity. I have lines of competency, but I'm just trying to stay right here. And if I can balance myself, if I can use my head center to like figure out how to walk this tight wire where I'm actually fucking happy or okay, then I've made it. But then it's like, yeah, you're walking a tight wire and now you're frustrated.
One way I think of it with the lines thing, I've mentioned my birth stories concept, and like with seven, 1 and 5 is, it's kind of the ideal there with 1 and 5 is a sort of an impersonal, unemotional, machine-like competency and objectivity or whatever. And the point with this birth stories concept is that the type that's between whatever type is actually doubling down on the exact opposite. So it's like doubling. So if 1 and 5 is a kind of dry, Spartan competency and utility, 7 is doubling down into fantasy
Yeah,
or something. Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting to look at the role that seven plays in the world. And you talked about like not giving up on your dream, and seven is the one that's the type that's willing to burn itself alive for that dream and recover and then go back again and do it again, because if you're not willing to do that, then you might as well just die. And it feels like when you just look at attachment and rejection, like you sometimes hear a lot of these influencers or like 3-fixed, 3-ing 2-fixed, or where they're sort of disowning their own dream. Like if you're not willing to do the thing that you hate or you don't like to get the goal or to get the thing that you want, then you don't deserve it. So there's like this narrative that you have to sort of like forget about the things that you enjoy or that you desire or that your dreams to sort of achieve these numbers or these goals. Like that's a big American thing, at least maybe in the West, where forget doing the things that you like, just do the things that work if you want to be successful. And it feels like the role that seven is playing is this idealistic, not giving up on your dream, seven sort of exemplifies this willingness to burn yourself alive
Mhm.
to get it.
Yeah. And I think that framing, like, I'd like to change it a little bit. Like, the dreams, like going after your dreams feels like recompetency a little bit almost. It feels like seven, what it's fighting for, it's like it's fucking imagination. Like just
Right.
being able to
Mhm.
use your mind creatively or whatever. And it's like looking at and one of the things that makes it frustrated with the rest of the world is that you often see people just like just not using their minds for fun at all.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
just
or for
being
something better.
super, yeah,
It-
like
Yeah.
It's like
super rigid.
it's like in
Mhm.
my overlaps thing where seven and social sexual, the thing of since it's self-pres blind, it's willing to well just burn yourself out for a dream or whatever, right? It's
Mhm.
somewhat self-sacrificing, and it's kind of to what you're just saying there, not pragmatic, right? It's
Mhm.
self-pres
Yes.
blind that way. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a magic to not being pragmatic because like even if I'm thinking about, the sevens I know in my life, it's like all of them have been through hell, like just like horrible lives. I don't know. And then they don't seem that way. Like even though they're manic and they're like anxious
Right.
and disoriented and overstimulated, whatever, um, they seem less touched and fucked with by the world than a lot of other people.
Hmm.
And they still have some kind of bright-eyed thing to them. I think when you see a seven like really fall apart and like is in a super bad place is when I think when the world does touch you, whatever
Mhm.
finally does like penetrate, then that's a disaster. Because then the mind like
I guess you
I've,
stop
the
imagining.
mind closes down.
Okay,
I've
you stop
seen
imagining.
Hmm.
I've seen
The mind. Go ahead.
sevens in pursuit of whatever they're in pursuit of, like put themselves through some horrible shit, and there's a certain way that they kind of have this positive outlook view that it won't touch me,
Mhm.
but like not being able to gauge what's actually going to like touch them in a bad way.
Yeah.
And then there becomes a lot of feeling kind of like self-hatred and feeling tainted in some way, and instead of processing it or sitting with it, it's kind of like doubling down and being a little bit of like provocative brat about it and just going full in and like not realizing the damage they're doing to their own like heart. They're not
Yeah.
like really aware of the status of their heart. And so yeah, I've seen that like, speaking of this kind of backlog of like remorse or grief or whatever it is, um, going hard and just like it's kind of like the where you see like the like lighthearted comedian becoming the Joker kind of
Hmm.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like
That's good.
it feels like when sevens are in a really dark place, instead of it feels like less of the head center and more of just like doing shit,
Hmm.
automatic, and that's when it slides into like addiction, and it's not just like addiction with substances, but just like addiction to movement. I've had a seven friend. I'm like, just stop like doing things. Just let
Mhm.
yourself go through. Your life is like not
Yeah,
because when it does stop, then that's kind of when like the tragedy porn or whatever fucking impulse comes up, and so things are bad, but then they get like turned up to 1,000. I think maybe part of that is just like feeling repressed and not knowing how to deal with bad emotions. Because to me, it feels like even when I try to process bad emotions, I just feel like I'm much worse at it than other people. Like I don't know. And so I feel the same frustration when it comes to other sevens. It's like, yeah, we'll stop and we'll try to deal with our hearts or deal with what like the bad shit that's happening. But there's a way that I don't know, it's not saturating or something.
Hmm.
I always
Yeah.
say that I don't think it's the case. Like people always shorthand it, say that sevens like um don't don't know what they're feeling or something, or don't have many feelings, and like I mean sometimes in some cases, but I always say it's more like limiting feelings like remorse and grief for what's really hard for the seven, because those are like we're talking about all this negativity and frustration that sevens feel, but remorse and grief kind of like have their own lifespan, and they kind of
Mhm.
work themselves out on their own pace, and they're integrating kind of like in some sense like they're identity changing
Yeah.
emotion or feelings, and I think it that those feelings do clip the whatever you said earlier, like the wind in your sails or whatever the fuck, like it derails you from getting the good thing. And
Or
so
movement.
yeah,
Movements in
Yeah,
general.
that's interesting. I guess I have felt those feelings. It just feels like damage. Doesn't feel like something productive is happening. It feels like something life ruining is happening.
I wanted to ask you actually, what do you think the difference between 4 and 7 is? Because 4 gets the rep for all the negativity, but it seems like 7 it's similar, but it seems like 7 deals with the negativity by thinking that the world is going to, if I like fuck with the world in some way, I'm gonna maybe get the honey or something. And like 4 is sort of like, I'm just not going out in the world and going to make a sense of self that is somewhat protected or somewhat separate from all the bullshit. Like, I was just thinking about, like, what do you think about those kind of differences in 4 and 7?
Um, they do seem very similar and they do feel similar. I just keep on going back to assertive and withdrawn. Like it feels like the 4s are just more, I don't know, less manic, more saturated into their actual life and like experiencing it more. But then they experience less in the outside world because and that's what the 7 is constantly looking at. I mean, that's how I feel about withdrawnness. Is that, in withdrawnness in general, like it feels like you guys sit deeper into the seats of your lives. Like you're experiencing a lot more of it. Whereas assertiveness is like you're putting all of your energy to like get out into the world and like affect the world in some way and let the world affect you. So you almost lose like some kind of you lose some part of yourself like with assertiveness. And you're not as saturated. And being that way helps you like get into the whirlwind of the world more. So that's the biggest thing I see.
Something that's kind of interesting even about that conversation is that both of the hexad, for whatever reason, it's just the head center and the heart center. The hexad heads don't have lines to the heart center. And the hexad hearts don't have lines to the head center. So there's even
Fuck that
something
head
like, there's even something about like 7, if 7 doesn't have lines to the heart center, then it doesn't have like a natural movement towards something that will regulate those emotions, something that will help them sit in that kind of shame, or identity problems or some kind of emotional regulation or something like that. And if we go back to Josh's theory, Josh calls the head center the I can't remember how he would phrase it, but he says that it is basically, he calls it the solution to the heart center. But anyway, that feels like it relates to the kind of activity stuckness that 7 can get itself in. Because it is a lot of movement, but sometimes from my vantage point, it still feels just as stuck despite having all of this dynamicism. And 4, in a similar sense, like there's a way that it like doesn't actually know how to orient all of these feelings, and so it has a kind of inner turbulent stuckness. So it's kind of interesting with both of those.
Yeah, it's like two different ways of running away. Like 7's
Yeah.
constant motion, but 4 you can run away by not going anywhere, by just burrowing deeper into one spot and finding like a whole inner universe in one spot.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. It's like an external escapism versus an internal one.
Yes. 7 is like external fantasy, and 4 is, well, I guess you could say 4 and 9 is internal fantasy, but it's internal fantasy frustration. Like, so it's got a jagged edge going inward.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that feels right.
Yeah, it's interesting, this thing about 7, like it comes up to me with me when I work with 7s all the time, is how much self-hatred there is. Like there's just a lot of self-hatred in 7s, and often it's like it's like 50-50 whether it's actually in the 7 self-image or not. Like sometimes some 7s just fucking know it, and then other 7s you got to kind of like get underneath something, and then they discover how much shame and hatred there is underneath. I think often, there's all this stuff that I spoke to earlier about. Maybe I've put myself through different things or made really stupid decisions or hurt other people. That's a thing. There's also a hatred based on a feeling of being childish. it's like a real sense of, even though they might look like they've like had a blast and like done a lot of stuff in their life, there's this sort of undeveloped self, or like I haven't developed in some way. Like I'm still kind of a kid figuring out, and like I hate myself for not kind of being competent, being an adult, being something along those lines, like figuring out reality. Like I have a lot of that stuff, and I've expressed it on this, pod of like social blind and super withdrawn. Like, oh, I like missed some things about reality that maybe like if I'd not been so doubling down on my own thing, like maybe my pattern would have relaxed and I would have had whatever. Uh, and so it's interesting because it's a similar thing, even though it's very worldly and experience
Mhm.
oriented. It's like there's some way that there's a remorse that things didn't stick or grow or mature or like deepen enough. And now I'm like this fucking asshole in my 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. Um, yeah, it's just really interesting.
One thing on the I don't know, negative self-image or whatever, like with my patented 7-term unconditional positive self-regard, if whenever there's something like that that rings true, uh, that means there's going to be a shadow thing that and a big shadow that's the exact opposite. So, uh, you know, absolute negative self-regard or whatever is on the other side of the universe.
Yeah. Hmm. I've been thinking about the unconditional self-regard thing a lot. I do think it's true, but I think it's back to the tight wire thing. It's like that's the like consciousness or I don't know mode that you're trying to get into to
Right.
like then like go back into the world. Because yeah, there is I feel this fucking self-hatred thing like a lot. And there's like not a single 7 that I've met that doesn't have that. Like like an almost ridiculous amount of self-hatred.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
So it feels like you just need to get back on the horse, like be on your own fucking side so you can get back into the world.
it's reminding me of what I was talking about earlier with the sense that you didn't get enough from mother, like unconditional positive self-regard as a program is the 7 doing the mothering for themselves.
Yeah.
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 That's exactly what it feels like because it's
Yeah.
like it's not an attachment type. You're on your own,
Yeah,
and it's like
totally.
there's zero trust that the world's gonna be there for you. It's you're by yourself. No one's gonna be on your fucking side. Nobody's gonna give you what you want. Nobody knows what you could want. So
You
Yeah.
do you
you're on your own,
feel
babe.
would you be willing to give an example, or if you have, whatever, if you don't want to or don't have one, but of you catching yourself trying to fulfill something that you didn't get in childhood?
Yeah, I'll just go to I guess my first big memory of it, which would be in like junior high. Um, yeah, so my family moved out around a bunch, just for like various reasons, and I came up in a very big family, and I guess just I didn't have a lot of gaze or just attention, um, and so when I went to school, I was kind of behind because I had moved around so much, and just things around my family. So I was like, there's some 3 in this as well. So I was like, I'm gonna get very good at school, and I did, and I'm gonna have a lot of fun in school. I'm gonna be in every single club, and I was in every single club, and I'm gonna be really popular. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna get a lot of friends, um, and I wasn't super conscious of it, but a lot of that was just like so I could get people to look at me and people to like me and for me to have adventures and to make like a big strong line between my home life and like my school life. Like I'm gonna have fun, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big one.
Mm-hmm. You have a bunch of siblings?
Yeah, I have 3 siblings, but there was like a bunch of generations like living in my house, so there's like 13
Right.
people living there. Yeah.
What are you? What order in the sibling rank?
Firstborn.
Firstborn. Okay. Yeah, I'm the oldest of 4s also.
All the
Yeah.
firstborns here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And then there's
David's
then there's
selfish
a
ass.
promised
Yeah,
child.
then.
The special child, the star child.
Special.
God, that is funny that we're all oldest except David is just David.
It does make sense in a way though. It's like the oldest child, you're like you come into the world and you're looking at your parents and then your siblings come around and you're like, I need to figure this shit out.
Totally. Yeah,
We're
no,
like,
it's up to you to figure out like this whole thing, and they're all like fucking. They put their anxiety on you to figure shit out, and
Mm.
then with your siblings, they're like, "Here's a car."
that's totally the story because I'm looking at my parents and like their relationship sucks. I don't want to end up like that. And looking at my sisters, it's like there's something wrong here. I need to read some psychology books and figure out what's wrong with this picture.
Totally. Moving back to 7, like with that sense of satisfaction, like does it just feel like it's impossible, or does it get like little hits and then you're trying to get more out of the hits, or how does it basically work?
I definitely get hits, and I think other sevens do too. It's just like, but it's temporary. I guess that's the thing. Like your life can't be just one peak. It's like when I am peaking, I know I am, and I enjoy it and I feel it like with every fiber of my being. Um, I think the frustration it's like that meme that you had on Instagram, the frustration cycle with the bloody dude in the middle. Like, oh, I have I have a standard. I meet that standard. I feel satisfied for a second. New standards.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
And
So
God forbid, like you don't reach the new standard and you don't even reach the old standard and now you're in like fucking hole.
Mhm.
well, I guess, like with this pattern, like what do you think is helpful or useful about seeing it, right? Like if it's almost sort of like you got to take what you can get, what you can get it, but it's also kind of just like endless disappointment. Like how do you find something separate from those things, like something inner?
I think releasing importance around the ego structure helped me a lot. It's like it's not going to turn off. Like I haven't ever been able to successfully turn off being a 7 and wanting the juicy stuff about life or whatever. But I've been, I've had a lot of, success trying to take away from, I don't know, just the importance I have around the thing. Like I want to get what I want. I want a beautiful life. Like it's calm that down. Like be okay. Have some
Mhm.
sort of level of acceptance for what's going on right now, and like prepare yourself for it might be getting worse. At least it just seems like the opposite of what you want to do in your mind, but I think it's possible. And I think the line to 5 helps a lot with that, like working with that line. Working with just the idea that you might have less, like just need less from the world, need
Mhm.
less
Yeah, that's
from
good.
yourself. It's not exactly inspiring, but it works.
No, it's
Well,
real.
I mean, another angle with the 7 line to 5 is to deepen into the juice of whatever it is you're biting into. You
Yeah.
know, it's like
Savor it.
like 7 has the sampling, yeah, and then 5 goes just plunges right the fuck in there, sometimes beyond the point of enjoyment, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that's the positive line to 5 is it's not necessarily like, I don't know, like giving up on possibility or the idea of like a good or satisfying life rather, but just like really juicing the whole lemon.
Mhm. Yeah, I suppose the sort of multi-directional imagination of 7, to me can feel like getting high on possibility to the point where you don't fully go down any one path, but the idea that you could is enough to maintain that sort of buzz of things could be interesting things could happen. And that sense of possibility feels like the edge that the 7 wants to live on. I think the avoidance of really saturating keeps you in that realm of the buzz of possibility, at least from my
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, and it feels like, I don't know, it feels like you don't even have to do anything to get there. Like
Yeah.
if you're a 7, you've already probably dealt with a bunch of fucking bust cycles, and it back to what
Yeah.
John said earlier with was it remorse and grief? Like those are the 2 emotions that 7s aren't able to handle. Like at least in my life, what I've seen is like if I actually dive into the grief and remorse, you have less energy to do the fucking scatter thing, and then so you just naturally fall into kind of a line to 5.
Yeah.
You don't have to focus on being competent. I don't know, you're a head type. And if you fucking shut out the world and you're unable to go out into the world, you're just gonna there's a way that you can flow into the line to 5.
I th-
Um and you have enough material already that's
Yes.
backed up to just go there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. Yeah, and another thing too about the line to 5 is that it's like also offering something. Like
Mm.
the
Yeah.
point Alexandra once made about sevens was unhealthy sevens will just be like complete takers, but they can fool themselves because they think they're being more fun and creative, and isn't it just great to be around me or whatever it is, and not
Mhm.
realize that they're just like really just draining the life out of everything. And I think that goes against their self-image. But
Yeah.
yeah, what I've seen is sevens getting kind of, you never get out of the boom bust cycle, but at least like getting some air from it because they're able to offer something.
Mhm.
And like, it's not about am I getting what I need out of this thing, but it's kind of like with 5 gets very like there's a satisfaction in 5 and just like in not just the understanding, but in the mastering something,
Yeah.
in the having something that is my rejection offering basically. And then even like the line to 1 is about um stepping outside of desire and into like a fixing energy.
Mhm.
It's like part of 4 is the same thing. The line to 1 is like I'm not just like fuck all this, but there's like a little bit of like an energy of doing something with that, of fixing or abiding by something outside of myself. See, I always find that is like that earlier self-hatred based on being a child that hasn't developed anything. It's like the 7 hunger, gluttony hunger, uh, I think can make a 7 feel like they don't have anything,
Mhm.
and then the line to 5 is where they recognize they have something, like you were just speaking to, like, oh, I've gone through a lot. There's material here, whether I've worked it into something or not.
Mhm.
I think that's like a foothold in something other than I'm not getting what I want. Oh, maybe this is what I want. Oh, this is great. Oh, I'm not having any more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. The offering that comes with rejection.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the other side of it as a rejection type, what frustration offers me is there is a lot of usefulness into channeling your frustration, using your frustration to propel you into action. That is a fuel that can that can fuel assertiveness to actually change things. And that, the problem with rejection is that you sort of like in a situation, you might accept the terms and say that this is what I have to work with, or um, the leverage in this situation. This is what it is. This is the scene that I'm in, and I'm going to work within that. And what I like about frustration, uh, that can pull me out of that, is just to say like it could be different. Of course, you're opening yourself up to disappointment, but you're doing so much. At least as a rejection type, I'm doing so much of this is what it is, that it is helpful to have enough idealism to basically risk disappointment to make things better,
Totally.
to actually expect that the universe can give me, or I can get what I want from the universe. Like there's a certain level of naive expectation or entitlement that you kind of need to step into to propel yourself to I'm going to try to make this happen. And it does feel it is a difficult thing for me to actually hold on to. But frustration is helpful to sort of get myself out of that rut.
Yeah, I've noticed you speaking like just a lot better and clearer about frustration since being with a frustration lady. Like, you said some really good stuff about like, that is really good for me as a frustration type to see through the eyes of a non-frustration person. So like, you talk about like the heartbreak of having dreams,
Hmm.
and it was like, you're dead right. And it's the thing is like, yeah, and I'm sure Ikram tell me if it resonates, but I'm always looking around like people don't seem like they fucking want anything,
Mm-hmm.
and what they do want, they'll like shit on and sabotage. I always from the identity heart level, I'm always like people are trying to like kill their hearts, like unconsciously, their heart's desire, they have something there. And then even like, pointing out this thing that we've talked about recently with like the danger of rejection attachment combinations in types, where yeah, there can be this kind of non-specific accumulation of something.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's like hustling or whether but it's just even in like the 5-6 space, it can be like just like impersonal systems or whatever. But it's like there can be deletion of that specific thing. And I had my own kind of frustration, I don't know, journey or turnover or something recently. Like, so when I went to Mexico to see the eclipse, like I was really excited to see the ancient like Mexican stuff, like the pyramids and the art. And it was cool. It was like really fun. It was great. It was really interesting. I read a book on it. But I was expecting kind of hit of the esoteric in the vein of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had this kind of like frustration crash where I was like really disappointed because I was like, wow, Egypt is so amazing. Nothing compares to it. Like I thought this might hold a candle and it
Mm-hmm.
didn't. Like in terms of the mystery and I was like, is Egypt the only like source of that kind of mystery in the world? Like is that where it all is? Like that kind of that specific flavor of mystery. And I had this like real disappointment like thing, and then I had to like work with it, and I was just like, man, this fucking sucks. Like I've already seen it, I've already done it or whatever. And then it was like realizing like, you know what, like I've been able to do that several times, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to see like the coolest fucking thing. And like I got to do that. So it was sort of like I had to move into a gratitude space because it was like um like the trip in Egypt a couple weeks ago was the best experience of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this really interesting thing where, yeah, it was like, I don't know. I'm still kind of finding language for it, but there was this like, I have this dream for this special esoteric thing, and I want it to be like everywhere. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's not
Yeah.
everywhere. It's in this specific place. There's a specific way to get it. It's like, it's not expansive anymore. And then having to reframe how I related to that. All makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, because
No.
Alexandra and I were like texting while I was in Mexico, and she was like, "Are you having fun?" Kind of. I don't know how you felt it, but I sort of got the impression you thought I was going to be like, you know, fuck yeah, going into pyramids and stuff like this, and I was a little bit like, this is good, but it's not what I wanted, or something like that.
Yeah, you seem disappointed.
Yeah.
Well, I see a lot of use. I mean, my rejection, knee jerk reaction is just to eat that frustration. I can expel a lot of frustration, but the less comfortable I feel around people, you're not going to see any of that from me. Like it feels like a sort of a display of your inner organs in some kind of way to like actually show that you're disappointed with reality and that you're not getting what you want. And it feels like you're getting naked. And so for me to actually talk about the things that I'm disappointed by, um, I've come to recognize that is it brings you closer to people. Like rejection does feel really distant. The rejection attachment thing feels really distant because it doesn't feel like your personal stakes are not there.
Totally,
And
yeah.
and so that's one thing I've had to observe in myself is push comes to shove, there can be this kind of disownment of that. Uh, and yeah, the last couple years has been kind of trying to create more internal space for me to express that across the board, not just with people I feel really close and comfortable with. But it does feel like a huge vulnerability. Like, I don't fucking want you to see what I care about.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious, Ikram. I don't know if do you listen to the pod?
Yeah.
Because we've been talking about this like aesthetic kind of, in a broader sense than just like visual aesthetics, but like this specificity, dream flavor kind of thing. Especially, I think in the last one we recorded. And yeah, I was just kind of curious if you had general thoughts about that. What we've been calling like frustration bringing your personal aesthetic. If you like experience that, or what, or like, and especially like how it comes through in the head center.
Yeah, I have been thinking about that because like the only place I'm missing frustration is in the heart center. So I
That's
don't
right. Yeah,
feel,
you
yeah,
got
I
team
don't
love.
feel,
That's right.
I don't, it's okay. I don't feel super, I don't know, affected in the heart center around like people's aesthetics and stuff, but I feel it so deeply in the head center, like all the time. It tortures me. people are having fucking standards for their lives, and like, this is all you want, this is all there is, like, this
Mhm.
is what you're okay with, this is what you like. I don't know. And I see that in sevens a lot as well, because it's
Is
just like, I think because we're obviously swimming in the freaking fantasy seven juice all the time, we're also good at seeing the ways that you could, like, I don't know, just do this a little bit more, and you can get something much better or whatever. So I'm like,
It-
man, nobody wants to put some elbow grease into life. Like, scam a little bit harder. Like, just push
Scam
the
harder.
boundaries. Like, you could get so much more out of life. This is
Isn't
what
Scam harder,
you're
baby.
Isn't
Yeah.
choosing.
part of the
Exactly.
isn't part of like the aesthetic, and maybe aesthetic isn't the right word in the head center or whatever, but that that you're disappointed that people aren't being creative mentally, right?
Yes.
You're
Yes.
deficient. That's your aesthetic deficiency, is that
Mhm.
people aren't thinking of new interesting possibilities or whatever. You know what I mean? Or people are being negative, or people are being too grounded in reality,
Right.
right? That's
The-
the
okay.
aesthetic, right?
Over the last few years, I've been seeing the grounded in reality thing. Like, I have a big reaction against that. I'm trying to work on it. But that is
I have a problem with
that is
that
a big
too,
thing. So I'm just like, why is this what you choose to spend your time thinking about?
Yeah.
Like, this is what you
Reality.
this is
Yeah,
what you
totally.
hold important, especially like the 6-5 line, or just like, I don't know. It's competency and it's also like safety. It's like, okay, but just like get killed by life
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
get more
you go.
out of it or whatever.
To
It seems-
scam more and get killed by life. Ikram, what advice do you have for me based on what you're frustrated by?
Um,
I'm just doing it right.
what's that?
Be
Just
less
doing it right?
serious. Be less
Yeah,
serious.
you're doing
John.
it. You're doing it. Perfect. I don't know. I think in general, for people who aren't sevens, like, the one thing that they could learn from sevens is you can die 10 times while you're alive and then reanimate. Like, I think it's possible.
Oh, that's
Like,
good. I
obviously,
like that.
sevens are doing that too many times.
Somebody's
But
somebody's fantasizing right there.
oh, very good.
Thank
But no,
you.
that's what I love the most about sevens. Like, I have so much shit I could say about them, and I get frustrated with them, and I need to take breaks. But like, I find myself like super inspired by them, because it's like, yeah, it's an assertive type that's like not scared. Like, it's not worried about competency. They have way more adventures than everyone else. Like, they do. No, they juice life.
Yeah.
I want people to juice their lives a bit better. Just get more out of it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that that's just the specific intersection of frustration and the positive outlook, and assertive gives you like the drive to go get it, but positive outlook is going to be a really important part of that, because it's the thing that helps. It's like, okay, frustrated with reality, positive outlook gives you like the North Star to chase,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like, if you look at the head center, 6 is trying to understand what is, trying to create the map for what's happening now. And
Mhm.
5 is trying to get underneath reality and find something new that could be the seed for what is. But 7 is out there trying to find a new horizon. So it feels creative in the sense that at some point we're going to discover something that hasn't been like externally, create some new reality. And
Yeah.
like, it seems like all the sevens, or the famous sevens, are always trying to create the next big thing. And eventually it becomes like, okay, Apple and these stupid apps, like, or this iPhone or whatever. And now that's the thing we all fucking use. Like, it's just this is like a given reality. Some fucking crackpot 7 figured out some new scam, and now we all use it. So
Yeah, it's innovative, it's progressive. Those are also 7 words.
Follow your schemes.
Yes.
It's also hitting the
Scam
overlaps
more.
thing too. Again, like 6 overlaps self-pres. So what is reality, right?
Mm.
And 5 is self-pres sexual. So it's finding my own specific thing in reality, right? Burrowing into it.
Right.
And then 7 is self-pres blind. So it's like not reality, right?
right,
Just
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
new reality.
new reality.
Yeah, I think the reality bit, like, I think it's a lot of it is tied up with, I don't know, people sometimes things are only real because everyone else agrees that they are. So it's just
Mhm.
like, oh, this is real, right? Yeah, this is very
100%.
real. This is a serious
Okay.
issue. It's like, okay, like stop that. Like, stop. We shouldn't be thinking about that. We don't need a like. Let's think that something better is real. Or
Yeah,
some
yeah.
shit. Or how about you as an individual figure out what's real for you so you can have a better life or whatever. Instead of like everyone like joining some grand council talking about something deeply limiting and sad.
Deeply
And
limiting.
be like, this is what we as a society need to think about. And blah, blah, I don't know. I'm just like now being more theatrical with
No,
it.
I mean, I think you're right. Like I have that sense as well, is that people just decide the most boring thing is the thing, and then it's just not even real at all. It's just some bullshit that's
That's
just
right.
consensus reality.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
curious, when I was talking to Emeka a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying how like it's pretty crazy that you two found each other for a lot of different, and you got a lot of like just weird things in common, like both being African is just like in Enneagram and personality systems, and and then but also like you the way you guys love movies,
Mm-hmm.
and like I mean those are just a couple examples, but it was like all those together. But I was curious, as a seven who loves movies, my experience with a lot of sevens is not a lot of patience with movies. And so I'm curious, like, and we've watched some slow ass movies together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, what that, the impatience and wanting speed and things happening, how that and long, slow, pretentious, boring, deep movies is like, how those combine in you.
I think for every seven the frustration objects are gonna be different. Like for me, I don't know, I hate a lot of like modern media. Like it makes me depressed because
Yeah.
I don't think people are dreaming big enough, or I don't think that there's something interesting is being said. So if something is like super slow, but I have trust that it's, or like I feel that it's gonna be different, or I feel like the director like put their whole fucking ass in it, or whatever, or heart. Yeah, I feel like I'm mesmerized the whole time, and I'm
So-
enchanted. I love it.
So there's kind of
Yeah.
like you said, trust, and maybe I'm overreading it, but I thought that was kind of interesting. Like
Mhm.
head center kind of term, right? Like trusting
Yeah.
that this is going to pay off in some way.
Yeah.
Giving patience, and like that's kind of maybe that's the line to five there for the seven, is like I can trust that this is going to deliver something, versus like this stuff I don't really trust, but I'm just trying to get the hit as fast as possible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a really good. I think that is true. Trust giving me like space to get slower or whatever. Yeah.
Who was
Yeah.
that? Who was that filmmaker that we were seeing? Was it Solaris? Not Solaris, but Stalker. What was the guy's name again?
Tarkovsky.
Yeah, like it's interesting because its movies are slow, but they're really pregnant with something really deep. Like they don't feel slow, like just a uneventful, boring movie. The seven thing is still, it's not necessarily about speed. I mean, I'm not to say that every seven would be capable of enjoying a movie like that, but those movies had something. It's like moving
For
at a
sure.
slow pace, but like there is something really significant going on that's entrancing.
But like I've seen that before, and I was watching it, and like I was actually blown away by your commentary, Ikram, because I was like,
Oh wow.
it was like
Thanks.
you were really paying attention and you're really absorbing it and really considering it, and I was like I was just really impressed by that, and also knowing your type in the mix and just being like, fuck, like how much you were seeing, and yeah, you had some like amazing commentary, and yeah, it was just like it wasn't because I don't think you're smart or something, but just I just didn't expect that level of like focus and saturation, and because it was, I mean, that is a rough movie sometimes, like just in terms of its length and pace. They're like lying in the water very slowly as the camera pans by, and it's just like trickle, 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 and then like pan out, and it's just so anyway, yeah, it was really interesting because I was like, whoa, there's some way that like my bias or whatever of seven is like fast or quick or get going, and we're doing like maybe one of the most slow and attention demanding films in history, and you were like
Yeah.
with it the whole time.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said about how you can use fantasy differently as well. Because I think with movies, even when I was a kid, movies like art or anything, I do feel like I'm being teleported to a different like plane of reality, and I'm like I'm like feeling that, it's easy for me to depart from my own life and go into something else.
All right. Any last words before we wrap up this call on 7 frustration?
No, I'm depleted. I'm
You're
a little
depleted.
sad. But it was actually it was a really good conversation. I thought it was balanced, both the pros and negatives. Cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty interesting. Like, I'm pretty tired, so I'm not very like animated, but no, it was pretty interesting
Mm-hmm.
because I
That
think
sounds so
a
cool.
lot of I have I've worked with some sevens, and I feel like listening to this, we haven't given 7 as much attention as a lot of the other types,
No.
and
And yeah.
you haven't really done it inside of 7 that much justice, I think. So now we're talking about how shitty it is to be a 7, and they'll finally
Yeah.
feel seen.
Yeah, it feels like at least especially the description on the site needs to be heavily updated because 7s read it and they're like, no, it's
Yeah.
just not negative enough. It's not cutting enough. That's the thing, I guess, that needs to be said. Like most 7s experience themselves as pretty negative. They're mostly disappointed most of the time. So the idea of being a positive type does feel wrong.
Yeah. You guys, the frustration pods have been really, really good.
Okay.
I've like
I know. I really like them too. Yeah. I thought they were good
yeah,
ones.
Yeah,
I've learned stuff in this pod as well. I'm stuck on them. The solution to being a 7 or whatever 7 frustration is like figuring out a leveraging point and an offering. Like that's
Mm.
really fucking good.
Yeah.
That's really, really good. I think because that's what I guess I've unconsciously did that, but that is what is like helping me
Mm.
in my adult life or whatever.
Yeah,
Like chill out.
because like it's almost the opposite of 7 or 2. Right? Like
Mm.
7 wants
Mm.
That's interesting.
7 wants the nipple, 2 wants to give the nipple,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and when 7's like, I have a nipple too.
I have the nipple. Source.
The abundance of milk flows through me, and then
Yeah.
like two when they start to experience and like my inner life,
Mhm.
which is their line to 4,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
take up space in the outer world and just like do things and just like have both 8 and 4 are about having a foothold in a sense of an experience of self that's not based in relationship.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And like
Right.
what's just all the weird, crazy, irrational shit happening in my subjectivity and expressing that. That's like there's
Yeah.
a 7-ish thing there, but that's their line of 4. And
Mhm.
what are my impulses? What does my body want?
Mm-hmm.
When do I want to say no? What's my? It's like getting even though it's 8, there's still some frustration there too, in a certain
Mhm.
from a certain point of view. So anyway, yeah, it's like I've seen when 7s become the nipple, they get
Yeah.
connected to something.
Overlaps again. It's like discovering the self-pres, discovering the thing,
Mm.
that I have that is a tangible something to offer. I mean, and I don't mean tangible necessarily in the object sense, right? It's like that there is some valuable material that I've gathered and gained and developed, right?
Hmm.
And that I can now offer.
Yeah, there's something that I can do that no one else can do.
Yeah.
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 I've literally been thinking like that. I don't know, just
that's-
naturally in the
And
last
it's
few
in
years.
based in reality because it's experience developed, right?
Yeah.
Have we done
Yeah.
anything like the overlaps between, like just to create an overlap between the instincts and the object relational affects? Because it just struck me then that if like rejection is so like self-prezi and offering and walled off, and then attachment is like social, and then
Yeah.
and then frustration is like the flavorful color
There's
and the sexual instinct is sexual instinct like a certain
Mhm.
way.
Interesting. Yeah.
there's well there's
Maybe.
a lot to say about all that. One thing I will say though is like Josh and I, he was in town. I don't know when that was, 6 months or so ago, and we went through his his whole theory thing with my overlaps thing, and it just was lighting up the switchboard just on everything. It was just there was a lot of pings there on, especially in the context of object relations in each center, and drawing the parallels with this my overlaps thing. Anyway, there's a lot that's coming out from all of that. It's like structural revelations about the types.
Mm.
Oh.
Nice.
Well, actually, this is before we go. I was actually curious, David, if you had any seven fix like you were vibing with Ikram, what she was speaking to from the point of view of your seven fix.
I don't know. Is there a specific part? Well, I mean, obviously, just the ungrounded Peter Pan fantasy stuff is a theme, and that. And
You
the
don't
thing
say.
and the thing of, not wanting or not having the impulse to reduce options, right? Like more options could only be better.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
we've seen that a few times.
Yeah. So,
certain zone that we won't.
Yeah.
I love roasting David on.
You just asked him that question so we can roast him.
But see, here's the thing, though, is that because of the seven fix, I like the attention. And
Yeah, he likes the attention.
It's like, okay, yeah, let's get into this. Ask me more questions. Let's do a David interview.
More options.
More options. And more attention.
John would be like, so which one of these options are you interested in, David? And well, there's this other option over here, and that other option is
and you
also.
never know who you're going to meet when you get there, and there could be several more.
It could be a mud wrestling match for me.
Yeah.
That
would be ideally what it would be.
Ideal. And then the reality hits. It's like, well.
And then you're not a core 7 because then you go all 9 and everyone's mean to me.
Is that what I said? I don't think so.
No, he doesn't say that. He just leaves.
It's like, remember that you're the scam artist here.
This scam didn't work out.
I'm trying to answer the question seriously. I don't know.
No, you're not.
Like what's an actual? I don't know. Like which one of the main points are you referring
I was
to?
just curious if anything lit up anything on the board during the conversation, but
he was lit up the whole time.
Yeah. Let's see. No, I don't.
Yeah, my question is too general for David.
Yeah, too general. I need to. And I'm nining. Right.
He already checked out. You're like, you can't ask him that question.
Yeah, he's ready to go.
Well, there's that.
He's already in someplace else. He's moved on.
That 7 piece. I'm ready to go. Got to keep running.
Yeah. All right. Well, apocalypse tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right.
Apocalypse not now.
Not now.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
All right,
Bye,
y'all.
guys.
Okay.
This is really fun.
See you guys. Yeah.
Thanks.
Later.
Bye.
Thanks for finally being fun, Crom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I have
Well,
to
I
deal
have
with
fun.
every day.
I always have fun.
And not frustrating us.
I'm the 7 in the relationship.
Delusion. It's just like the delusion gets worse and worse.
The delusion.
I'm almost worried
He's
about
not
you.
dealing with reality.
I make my own reality.
Like literally the most like curmudgeon grandpa type of person ever. Like that's not gonna work. That's not. And he was like, "Can you stop? Can you try not to start with no?" And he's like, "That's impossible." No.
I have to counterbalance what I'm dealing
The
with.
answer is no.
She's all the way up here. She's all the way up. She's just dancing with the stars, and I'm like,
Yeah.
let's come back down to earth a little bit here.
You're not the competency type. I want you to remember that every reactive type is also delusional in the same way that fantasy types are. Yes.
I'm still saying,
Yes.
let's meet in the middle. Let's just meet in the middle. I'm trying to be rational. You're just, you know.
God. Okay, bye guys.
The first time Emeka calls for balance.
I'm trying to be balanced.
Yin yang.
You know, I'm accessing my 9 wing.
I'm like, maybe it's good, and you're like, maybe it's in hell. That's not balance.
I'm just saying we should consider the possibility. Maybe we should consider the possibility that it is hell. That's all I'm saying.
But see, there's a third entity between you that is the combined relationship, and so he has to do.
I have to do that.
And you have to do.
You have to do your
Pink
heaven.
unicorn
I have to do
sparkles.
hell, and together we can feed the people.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to feed anybody.
Are you vaping?
Yeah.
Yeah, vape had to make its
reduced it.
appearance on a 7 pod.
She tried to quit for like a couple weeks.
The oral
I
fixation.
reduced it, okay? I reduced it a lot. Okay. Okay, now I'm frustrated. I actually have to leave. My butt
All right.
hurts. Okay, bye.
Till tomorrow.
Really pissed off.
All right. See y'all tomorrow. All right. Bye.